That video was transcendent.
Thank you. I was nervous at first because it's such a long song, you know?
It is. Okay, okay, so welcome. I am Rob Wallace. This is the Zero Noise Podcast, where we engage in progressive discussions about music, life, and everything in between with our guests. This podcast is also brought to you by Grove Studios, the 24/7 artist and rehearsal and production workspace. Whether rehearsing for your next show, producing a new song, doing a podcast, or shooting a video, Grove Studios is set up for the independent creator. Right now, Grove is offering subscriptions that can help you get your project or next creation popping off, I guess we could say. To learn more, visit grovestudios.space. We are also brought to you by Leon Speakers, the leader in luxury home audio. I don't have a blurb for them, but Leon Speakers has been great. They've been a fantastic sponsor of this podcast. We are also brought to you by IamInDemand.com. It's an initiative in Detroit. That's who I'm wearing today. Quan Ellum, shout out. We're joined today for our Amplify edition by our special guest, Maia Evans, the co-founder of the Amplify Fellowship. Go ahead, Maia. Check in.
Hi, everyone.
Give your shouts out real quick.
Yeah. So since you don't have a blurb for Leon Speakers.
Yes, give us the blurb.
Leon is my home base. We design, engineer, and manufacture custom audio. So soundbars for TV, architectural speakers. We can hide speakers in plain sight as well as make them living pieces of art, sound sculptures. And it's amazing sound. So we blend design with technology, and that is our thing. So incredibly happy to be working with Leon Speakers. And you can check us out at leonspeakers.com.
Absolutely. This podcast is produced by Project Plugin and shared with all streaming platforms through Captivate. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you are hearing or watching the podcast. So this is the last episode of this inaugural season of the Zero Noise Podcast. And I know up to this point, I've had like this long statement that I make at the beginning. And in going back and listening, it's kind of pretentious a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, they say, you know, don't be the wordsmith in the room.
Have you been doing grant writing for too long?
I have.
Is that?
I have. I'm like getting all deep and stuff. So here's what it comes down to. I listen to a lot of music. Art is important to me. I like to talk to cool people. I feel like music decorates time.
Absolutely.
As the people who come to talk to me, we talk about an album or a project that changed their lives. We can't play the music because of, you know, all the legal stuff, but you will never hear it the same afterwards. So this is a music podcast, but it is a people's podcast. And the person today is Dani Darling.
Hey.
And the album is The Future.
Future.
We've had an opportunity just to watch the first video from The Future for the single Down. It's not The Down. Mm-hmm. It is The Down.
Yes.
I keep calling it Down. I think that's just been the working title in my mind.
Yeah.
So, before we get into your life and all that your life has traveled, seeing that as the culmination of where you are today, and the single is available now.
Yeah.
On Bandcamp, DaniDarling.bandcamp.com.
Yep.
What does that video represent to you?
I think it's kind of like my experience through the pandemic, and also like I'm super metaphorical just because I'm so neurotic and there's so many like influences. You know, I said I wanted to do a psychedelic album.
Yes.
I said that Dark Side of the Moon was one of my big influences on this particular album. And I just remember in college people saying like, if you turn on Dark Side of the Moon at the very same time as you start Wizard of Oz, it lines right up. And I was like, oh, cool. And I tried it and I didn't see it. But I remembered that. And then when it came to the pandemic, I was like, you know, I did feel like the color got drained out of my world a little bit, you know. I heard London talking about that in their podcast about how, you know, you just feel like all of the energy or vibe is kind of drained. And so I wanted to do kind of like a Wizard of Oz in reverse and do, you know, the pandemic brings that kind of hollow black and white type vibe and having to look within to find it and find your people. And I think that has been my experience, was having to acknowledge the dark feelings of being, you know, isolated and scared and not knowing the direction my life was going to take at that point, and then finding that peace, finding my people still, finding that energy. And I think that's what the video represented.
Absolutely.
And the song.
I also feel like, did you feel like 2020 was going to be your year?
Yeah, I did.
I feel like a lot of people felt that. They're like going into a new decade, fresh start.
Absolutely.
Like, and then all of us were just taken aback and just didn't know what the next day brought.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
It's interesting how much the pandemic took away a lot from a lot of people. I mean, we absolutely need to make space to be able to say this. And I think, as we'll talk about your project a little bit later, yours definitely documented that time.
Yeah.
Overall. And it gave a lot to people too. You know, like we all, I just thinking about our journey, not even just related to the fellowship or whatever,
right,
but the time gave us stuff too. You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely,
it's just what I'm thinking about. So I would be remiss not to start by not talking about, not first giving you the opportunity to tell people who you are in your own words. So who is Dani Darling?
I think I'm a dreamer, a late bloomer. I'm a deep thinker, a mom, and I don't know, performer. I think even when I'm not on stage, I'm like performing in my own head. So I think those are all things that describe me as a person.
I want to see, now Dani is an astrology guru in my eyes. I don't even know if those terms go together, but I want to see if I have you pegged in a way.
Okay.
Are you meticulous?
About certain things. Musically, yes.
Musically?
Yes.
Are you looking for something?
Yes.
What are you looking for?
If I'm totally honest, fame.
Really?
Yeah, I think that's what I think I've always felt like that's my theme, or I don't know, it's a huge storyline for me. It's like, you know, when we were first born, we were on the front page of the newspaper.
Yeah.
And I think that's always like just my whole life of being kind of a spectacle, of being, you know, I don't know, special or interesting, or people being like, ooh, you know. That's kind of been a huge thing that's kind of shaped me as a person. So.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So therefore, before I even finish that, I'm just curious. So what do you consider, do you consider fame to be like your criteria for success?
Mine, yes. I don't think that's for everyone, but for me, yeah, personally.
Wow.
More because I want it to be for me individually, though, too, versus, you know, one of a group of 3 people that look alike. You know?
Which we'll absolutely talk about. You already know we're going to talk about that. Do you believe that you have always been a self-advocate then? Have you always advocated for yourself? Because there's like a dichotomy. Like, I feel, when I think of you, I think about a person who is able to step into social situations and be seen in a way, but not be necessarily comfortable. Do you feel like you have, did you have to learn how to self-advocate?
Yes.
Absolutely. What made you learn how to self-advocate?
I think there's a couple different things. I think becoming a mom, you have to learn how to advocate for someone else, and then you're learning how to step into yourself more. I think also coming out was huge for me. You have to advocate for yourself, or else I think getting older too, maturing. I think those things kind of force you to come out of yourself. I think just knowing that if I didn't eventually learn how to shake my self-doubt, or I was incredibly shy, even though we were really like, a lot of people would like approach us and talk to us. I was the one who kind of hid behind my mom or had like the shy smile. My sister Jackie was more the the one who spoke for the group, even though truly I'm the oldest and I'm kind of the mastermind, but that was behind closed doors. So I think it just was after a while I just realized that I wasn't going to get what I wanted if I didn't start advocating for myself. It's not just no one's gonna just hand it to you. You have to kind of take it.
So can we pick apart fame versus being seen and understood and known? Like, because I understand that drive to be known and understood. But is there anything besides that you're looking for?
I think if I think about the reason behind it, because I want to be seen as an individual, one, and then I think there's so much power in your representation and people being able to see you and you being a representation for people like you who may not feel strong, or who may not feel like they can advocate for themselves, or maybe feeling shy. Like, I was a total gleek in high school. I was bullied. Oh yeah. I mean, if you've ever seen Glee, that was me in a nutshell.
Okay. A fan of Glee?
Yes.
Okay.
I was, in the choir room talking about theory, and then, kids making fun of us. So it's like, I think the advocacy portion, I feel like the more reach I have, the more I'm able to do with my message, which I think is just super important. I always say I'm repping for the late bloomers and underdogs. So I think that's why I think it feels important to me that someone like me can actually get, on a bigger stage. The bigger you are, the more people you reach,
So one of the things that I've come to learn about all three of your projects and all three of your experiences is that, and it's really kind of like a microcosm for people in general, is that maybe because of the pandemic, maybe because we've been in the house for the last 15 months, there's this overriding thing about control. And I'm curious about, for a person who wants to be in control of their career and in control of their situation like you do.
Absolutely.
But also be a person that believes that there is a higher universal energy that drives things. I'm curious about where is kind of the line drawn in a way, like between which it's almost like, what's it called? Fate or free will. Like, how much, at what point do you say, I can control this situation, but I guess at what point do you say, I'm gonna leave this to the universe?
Right. I think I've gotten better at that over time. And I think that's the root of happiness, really. I remember when I was in a deep search for what my spiritual path was gonna be in college. And I looked at Baha'i, I looked at Buddhism, Judaism, all the big belief systems, and I thought Buddhism was really interesting because I had never considered that the root of unhappiness is expectation. Like, the more you're trying to control everything, or you want this to happen, you're setting yourself up.
Shout out to Sharissa Allen, who always says comparison is the thief of joy.
Absolutely.
Shout out.
Shout out. She's such a wonderful person.
She is.
And so I think I don't know. I think when the control thing, I have to tell myself and stop myself and say, calm that Mars and Scorpio, give it to the universe, and that's been why I'm more happy now. I think the more I'm able to do that, the more I have a peace within. So there's still struggles there because, especially with the pandemic, it makes you almost want to hold tighter because you feel scared.
Yes.
I think, it's always an oscillation. It's always trying to balance and figure out. It's a lifelong process, I think, figuring that question out.
Yeah, I have a print in my office, actually. It's a Buddhist quote. It's, you lose only what you cling to.
Mm.
And I try to keep that in mind when I notice that, like, yes, it's that expectation. It's that clinging to. And, yeah, also want to shout out Janet Jackson's song, Control. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't want to rule the world. I just want to run my life.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a great, like, callback into we can only control certain things.
Absolutely.
And trying to control everything is going to
Absolutely.
only lead to frustration and
Yeah.
Absolutely.
out.
Absolutely.
Such a great song, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So you came out of the womb as a celebrity.
Kind of.
You know, let's kind of, you know, talk about that. You're a triplet, an identical triplet.
Yep, we just found out last year.
Yeah.
So we're identical.
And you took your entire tribe along with that, along for that journey via, you know, your social media. Why did you choose to make that such a public thing? Because I guess I don't want to answer for you, but I think
I said, we were, you know, front and center. We grew up in a large community. We went to a really big church in Belleville. So, like, growing up in Ann Arbor, we had, you know, you're exposed to Ann Arbor, which is its own kind of situation.
Yeah.
And then every Sunday, and then we were super into it. Like, we were, if I wasn't a Greek, I was like a Bible thumper. Like, we were Wednesday night Bible study, Saturday night praise dance and praise team and choir rehearsal, and then Sunday church, and then if it was a revival, then you're there all week.
all week.
So that was
Right.
where we went for our, you know, community, and it was a big hub of the Black community from Belleville, Detroit, Ypsi, Ann Arbor, and it was so many people who were involved in raising us. There were so many kids who were our age, even our same year, our same grade. So it was a huge group of people, and we're all still pretty close on Facebook. So that's why we were like, everyone's gonna want to know this. Like, we thought it'd be fun. Like, people were all guessing who's who, and, like, you know, thinking back on the old days where we were just kind of like a lot more identical. And so that's why we thought it'd be fun, because there were so many different people who had opinions on who was the identical, who were the twins.
Right.
So
Curious about how you grow at the same time with two other individuals at the on the very same clock that you are on, essentially.
yeah.
How are the three of you different?
We're quite different now. Nikki is a flight attendant. She's the far right.
Okay.
She's youngest by 30. She's younger than me by a minute and a half.
Okay.
She's on the left in that one. And she is a purser. She flies. She runs the flight and does first class. And I'm her spouse. So that's why we go on trips to Europe for $60 and have great, amazing experiences. But I'd say she's actually kind of the more toned down one.
Okay.
She's a little more sarcastic and dry, but she's also very giving, loving, and self-sacrificing. But we are super close at this point. We talk a couple times a day. We'll just, like, be on the video chat and not even be talking, but just going throughout our day, but still be on the phone together. So we've got a very special friendship. And then Jackie is in the middle there, and she's the tallest. She's the one who's always pushed me, and vice versa. I think we always kind of were the more similar looking growing up. People thought we were the identical twins, but there was definitely struggle there. You know, outside of astrology, outside of that other stuff, people say your name means a lot. And so I don't know who decided to name the second in a group of triplets Jacqueline, which is derivative of Jacob, which, if you know the Bible story of Esau and Jacob, he comes snatching after his older brother's heels and steals his birthright. So Jacob literally means supplanter. And it felt like I had a target on my back from day one with Miss Jackie. But it's always been in fun, and it's always been, you know, when we weren't rivals, we were besties. So I think that actually pushed us to excellence, if I'm honest. Jackie.
And then there's you.
And then me, yeah. I'm the oldest, but nobody really knows that if they see all three of us together. And I think now is kind of really more the time where people are starting to see me. I went to a funeral at the church I was talking about. Our pastor had passed away, and we ran into someone who was, really, knew all three of us. And we hadn't seen each other in years, and he was like, Jackie? And I was like, no. And he's like, Nikki? And I'm like, no. And he's like, I forgot the third name. And I was like, Danny. So I think now is the time where I think I'm kind of standing out a little more than I ever did out of the three of us.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did being so heavily involved in church, how did it cultivate your early music leanings? Because you said choir and stuff like that. So
I think...
and how does it still influence you?
Yeah, I think the community aspect, but honestly, we were in gospel choir at church, but I think it was actually choir at school that influenced me more. I'm really into the cerebral or kind of mental aspect of music. So learning technique, learning that why were we hoarse by the end of the day on Sundays? Because we were just blowing our voices out. And our choir teacher in middle school was like, okay, I got to teach these girls how to how to properly use their voices. And I think that was probably the biggest influence, was learning classical music, was learning how to blend. And the three of us became quite the classical music trio. We ended up senior year doing an aria from the Magic Flute, and we sang in French, German, Italian, all that. So I think that was a huge influence. Just learning to blend and harmonize has just been a big thing for me. And you hear that in certain parts of the music, too, I think.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about growing musically. So you went from middle school, your initial involvement in choir. What instrument did you play?
I played violin.
Okay.
And then I switched to cello.
Okay.
And then I switched back to violin. And then picked up the guitar in college. So.
Okay.
And I dabble on the piano, but I can't claim that.
Now you were performing before you left high school, in crowds doing theater and all kinds of stuff.
Theater was huge for me.
And then you went away to college. Where'd you go to college, by the way?
I went to Heidelberg University. Then I went to Loyola.
Okay.
Then I went to Columbia College, Chicago. And then I went to Eastern.
Okay.
I had 8 different majors.
There you go. So why do you think that you bounced around so much in terms of what you wanted to study?
I think it was a couple different things. I think I really love writing, and I really loved sociology and things like that, and then I really loved music. So I think I just couldn't figure out how to make that a career, really, for a long while. And then, I was undiagnosed ADHD, so I think it just took me a long time to really figure out how to be a productive student and a productive person. That was hard for me growing up. And I think we were smart enough to kind of get by. But then as you get older, you just kind of realize there's certain things you need to unlearn and relearn. So.
Absolutely. Shouts out to all of us.
Yeah.
I think they call us creatives.
Yes.
I think all creatives have undiagnosed or diagnosed ADHD.
Yep.
And we all medicate in different ways, I guess.
Yep.
So you bounced around, you pick up the guitar, you start to play.
Yep.
You start to write.
Yep.
Right? And when did you first get involved in astrology?
That was college too.
Okay.
So I just started reading one day about Geminis. He's like, that's my sign. I guess that's cool. They're twins because I'm a twin.
Right.
So I started reading up on it, and then I started reading up on my best friend Jermaine, and he's a Virgo. And they were like, oh, they're overthink. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so him. And then I started reading about my other friend who's a Capricorn, and that was so her that I just never stopped. That's just how that started. I'm kind of an insatiable information person, so you never run out of things to learn about the universe.
That's true. So what else have you completely nerded out about? You went into astrology and you nerded out about it. Is there anything else that you voraciously learned?
Film, music theater. Black history, all kinds of things. I think it just depends. Like sometimes in any given year, I have like 3 different like micro passions that I kind of like. Lo-fi was a big one where I just kind of dove into that.
Clearly,
yeah. So yeah, I think there's an endless list of things that I think I have a lot of garbage facts they call now because of different phases of learning different things. Yeah.
What are your favorite movies, if I can ask? If you went into if you dug into film.
Favorite movies. Carmen Jones. It's a black musical with Dorothy Dandridge and Harry Belafonte. That's one of my favorites. Also, maybe I love Clueless. That's such a random like 90s film that I just love. Sometimes I just turn that on at night if I can't sleep, and I'm just like, that's it, and then I like feel at peace and go to sleep.
Right. Takes you back to your center.
It does. And then imaginative stuff. So like, I love Disney movies, and I like stuff like, I guess my favorite movie is random, but it's actually Kill Bill Volume 1. Yeah, I don't know why. I just
So good.
there's something about her that just really resonates, and the way like the crazy 88s ran down there, and it was just hopeless, and she was just fueled by this. I can't imagine being that fueled by revenge, but
yeah,
I could imagine being fueled by something that's going to empower you to take on something like that.
Kill Bill Volume 1 is like every type of movie I like rolled into one.
Yep.
I got a little anime in
Yep,
it,
exactly.
little action, revenge, all that stuff. I'm just curious about, do you consider yourself at this point let me back up. So when it came to the music that you were making in college, eventually you started releasing music. And the first thing that people can find from your discography on Spotify, at least, I don't know if you have anything before this in Bandcamp, but they can find
SoundCloud.
SoundCloud. Okay,
I have a
so
secret EP there.
yeah, let's kind of talk about that first. Self-produced,
Yeah. Yep.
self-played.
Yep.
What was the name of it, and what did it do for you?
You mean my first EP on SoundCloud?
Yeah, sure.
I was just kind of learning the software. I was kind of figuring out who I wanted to be or what sounds I liked. I had sang in a reggae band with King Jazzy B, and
Shout out to King Jazzy.
King Jazzy A. And then, I was working with the Black Opera at the time.
Shout out to the Black Opera.
Shout out to the Black Opera, Buff One, Majestic Legend, A. And I think I was just trying to kind of take everything I had learned from those guys and just have my own little private, it was just late at night, me and my computer trying to just tinker with things and not necessarily having an aim. And then, it came out, like this EP called Wonder that I did on SoundCloud. And then, I don't know, the rest was kind of history. I was like, okay, cool, what's next? And once I kind of got a handle on the software and everything, I just, knew that I was going to continue to put out music. I didn't know how much or how little or how often, but I knew I was like, now I'm cooking with something here,
Absolutely. So there is an evolution. Just in terms of looking at the music, you had a couple of singles.
Yep.
Back in like 2018. Were you already performing locally?
Yeah.
Pretty regularly by that point?
Not regularly. I had just started, I was working with the Black Opera, and then I'm like, I'm more of an instrumentalist performer than just, going through beat batches and kind of like singing to R&B tracks.
Right.
So I think that is what the transition kind of was kind of tricky for me, but definitely worth it to stop and be like, okay, I'm changing my name from Soul Galaxy Girl to Dani Darling. I'm going to actually stop being afraid to get out in front of people and play my guitar and sing.
Right.
Because that's where I'm probably going to be the most successful. I can't just wait around for a DJ or for a band to back me. I need to just figure it out myself. Like, that's where the kind of the self-advocacy started coming in. Where it's like, if I don't learn how to do everything by myself, I'm going to be sitting here waiting for somebody to take me on,
Right.
So that's where that started to happen in 2017, end of 2017, 2018.
Okay.
I started doing open mics, and Kyle invited me to this show with a bunch of acoustic performers, and I met Nadim. And that's kind of was the beginning of everything. I met Noor at that show, and she was like, I'd love to play bass for you. And then we just started getting together every week, and the band started. So
there you go.
Yep.
So
Shout out to Whip Jams. And
Shout out to Whip Jams and Nadim and Noor Borealis.
Did you, as you started to release music, how did it affect you? Like, some people believe that going through the entire process of music does something for them mentally. What did it do for you?
It was exciting, but it was scary. But it was also a learning experience because I started to realize, like, once you put something out there, it's out there. And once you do, it's like, it's the people who see it and perceive it. It's theirs now. It's not just yours. I think one of the first things I realized was, if I keep writing these sad love songs, that's what people are going to ask me about in these interviews. And then you get headlines like Dani Darling's Lonely Ballad of Loneliness. And I was like, oh no.
Right.
So I think all those things are learning experiences when you start putting out music. Like, okay, who do you want to be perceived as? Like, all that stuff you want to start thinking about. Even in the creative process, the things I didn't realize right at first. Right. So you put out your first 2 singles, and it seemed like you started to drift towards the lo-fi kind of world. Can you talk about, like, why lo-fi? Why did you cling to it? I think one of my deep dives, or one of my passions, was jazz music. But by jazz, I mean like the pop music of the 40s and 30s, 40s, 50s. Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, like all of those jazz standards that they do. I just really loved them, and I just saw how it was a way to bring that style of music back. I mean, even the way they bring the samples of like the kind of old harmonies and the quartets and the Nat King Cole type sounding stuff, and then add a little sick beat over it, and then you got like this whole new thing. So I think really it was the old cinematic jazz aspect of it that drew me in, because that was my favorite. I think that was one of my favorite phases of music for me, was when I discovered Ella Fitzgerald, and I was like, wow, her voice is similar to mine, and she's not doing a bunch of runs, or like there's certain things that I just really liked about her style and her approach and how she captured people, and it was something you could hang on to. So I think that's why I liked lo-fi. It's because I felt like I could do the kind of jazz vocals I like to do over those, and it's appropriate, you know.
It didn't have to be super duper complex. It was just, and you know, you can't go wrong with the hard drums and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that makes it modern. I love it too.
Yeah.
I love it as a motif almost. Shout out to I got involved in it with Low End Theory out in LA, and you know, obviously Dilla being kind of the precursor to it, and also it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect, and I think that's important. So I really love it.
Yeah, same.
So we get Nocturne. Let's talk about that.
That project was, I was going through a lot of pain at that point in my life, and there were some things I needed to really kind of heal and recover from, and I was having all these dreams and not sleeping, and those songs pretty much came out of that phase where it was like, you know, I was having dreams. My grandpa was there. He's a Pisces, shout out. And I was just, you know, really experiencing a lot of emotions that were hard to not address and approach, and that's what that whole project was about. And I felt like it was really dark, but I wanted it to feel very dreamlike, so at least kind of cover all the melancholy with a little bit of, like, you know, night vibes. Okay. So
then you know, you had All Stars. All Stars was a single on your next album, though, wasn't it? Your EP, Mage. Why EPs as opposed to LPs? Do you like how it's like a quick, succinct thought, like the last few things that you've done?
Kind of, yeah. And then also, I don't know, you can't get a Grammy for Best New Artist unless it's your first LP. So ulterior motives. I figure if I get big enough and then I do my LP, then I got a shot. You know?
Oh, okay.
If I do an LP now, then that's my one shot at it.
Oh no. That's so you just keep doing EPs until okay. But did Anderson .Paak win Best New Artist? I don't know, because I know he put out
not
Malibu.
It must have been an LP.
Oxnard, Ventura, Malibu. He put out one before that, I believe. That was, I guess, his first album. But
they made an exception for him.
The reason they may have the reason that I bring him up is because I see there being some parallels, because Anderson .Paak is able to do more of a traditional band type setup with more traditional songs that may be popish or whatever, in a way, if you could be popish and be Anderson .Paak. Right. But also he did a project with Knowledge that was completely lo-fi, and it was perfect. It was perfect. So that's why I always kind of associate the two of you in a way. The production homage was a little bit more SP404-ish.
Yes.
Let's talk about S&M.
S&M.
S&M, you said, I know what I said, but I don't need nobody to save me.
Yeah.
But lately, the quiet got me in my feelings. Now, this was was this during? Pandemic as well.
Very beginning.
What did you mean by saying that? I know what I said, but I don't need nobody to save me.
I think sometimes, I don't know if it's just, I don't always like to attribute everything to astrology, but I think everyone is contradictory. And I think if you talk often and a lot like I do, you end up contradicting yourself. So I think, owning that and saying, like there's times where I'm like, oh, I want to be in love. And there's other times where like, I know I said that, but not right now. So I think there's just the concept of contradicting yourself or realizing that you are more complicated than maybe you thought. But I think even in that phrase, don't need nobody to save me, I think even with the way I'm like saying that is kind of like from a place of like kind of hoping to mean that. But kind of like just saying that because that's what I'm supposed to say. But
to convince yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
It's coming from that kind of place because honestly, during that time, I was just like, what is happening? Like, I was singing about like going live and how like it just seemed like everything, you were stuck on your phone, you were stuck on the internet, and it was such a dangerous place emotionally. And that's why, S&M, it represents social media. And I think it just, I just had to like check myself on that because that was where I kind of initially was like, I need to connect. I'm a super extrovert. But it was starting to make me feel more and more isolated.
So, 2 things on that. A, I was so excited when I realized that you were on Spotify's Scorpio playlist with S&M.
Yeah.
And like, so I try to, those things are so well curated. And I
shout out to Shani.
And other thing is, do you know your Myers-Briggs personality type?
I'm an ENF. What's the last letter stand
J.
for?
J or P?
Was that judging or perceiving? I don't know. Maybe I would feel like I'm a perceiver, but I think I'm probably a judger. I think that last one is up in the air, but I know I'm an E and F. What about you guys?
I think I'm an ENFJ.
Okay.
I think. It's been years.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. I don't even remember what all that means.
Right.
Extrovert, intuition, feeling, judging.
Yes.
What about you?
I'm an INFP. So that would be interesting if we're on
We're ENFP.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what my thing is, because when I took it, I was a lot more whimsical. I'm a little more jaded post-pandemic. So I don't know. And I think you can change. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you feel like your knowledge of, like, do you do a lot of personality? Are you interested in like personality exams and true colors and all that stuff?
Oh yeah. Right now I'm really focused on what's called attachment theory. That's my current dive.
Okay.
And they say there are either secure attachment people, or if you're insecure attachment, you're either anxious attachment. That means like you really want to cling to people. If someone does something or you feel like someone you love is mad at you, you're like, can we talk? You're like almost more like willing to deal with whatever they're throwing at you, and you're almost at a position of disadvantage versus avoidant attachment, people who are insecure, so they just avoid. And usually avoidance and anxious people get together and it's real toxic. And then you can get people who are anxious avoidant, which they want to be close and they want to be really, clingy, but then they just push people away. So like, I think I love those kind of personality things. The more we can understand each other, the better, I think.
Sure.
People are so interesting.
Do you think you have, because of what you study and because of your interest in learning, do you think that you do a pretty good job of judging character from the beginning? Do you think that you pretty much have people pegged?
Sometimes, but then sometimes I feel like the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
You don't, absolutely.
I think I got into it because I was a horrible judge of character. And now I'm like, am I much better? I don't know. I think I put out vibes and hope that it just draws the right kind of people at this point. Because I like to see the good in everybody.
Yeah,
you know?
I do too. Yeah. And I fall on a sword for people for the sake of humanity. You know that. I kind of like extinguish opportunities for people to prove themselves. Yeah. And that's not necessarily always a good thing.
Not always, friend.
One of the things that when we talked to Kenyatta brought up some of the experiences that she had in terms of trying to grow herself and grow her brand in music as a woman.
Yeah.
And she was very frank with us about experiences that made her feel uncomfortable and things of that nature. How do you feel, what's your experience been in terms of maybe some things that you would share with future fellows who may be women or who may not be men, let's just say that, and some ways in which they can navigate through?
I think staying supported by other people that you trust, and I think always kind of getting feedback. I think a lot of times things happen and we as women, we're like, what's that? No, or like you shake it off, or you're in the moment and you feel like something is something you could let go, or things like that. But then you get the feedback from other people, like my best friend Noor is like an activist. So like now she's like, no, fuck that. Like, sorry, swears.
No,
she's like, just she's really like I think having a strong support system. I think before I felt like when I first got into the music scene, I felt comfortable because I had a boyfriend who was in the music scene. And he was an artist and people respected him. And that's why I felt like it was kind of a shield over me. So then when we broke up, it was like, all right, I got to figure out how to navigate this on my own. And so I think make sure you're surrounding yourself with really close people who are going to have your back, because and speaking up for yourself when you feel it, because sometimes that's hard though. I don't know the best advice. I think people do different. I think it also depends on the situation and the person. I don't know. It's a complicated problem.
I think one of my targets in doing this program, and one thing that I want us to continue to grow in, is teach artists how to have leverage, how to develop the leverage to be able to say no. Yeah. Or to be able to self-advocate. And for each of you, I've learned that a little bit more, because I didn't do it for myself when I was an artist to a degree. I was able to kind of choose what I wanted to do, like choose if I want to work on a project or not, but still feel always hesitant to say no to an opportunity, even if it didn't line up. So that's something that I definitely want future fellows to learn about, how to self-advocate, how to stick up for yourself, how to stick up for your brand, how to, navigate people telling you what you should do, and being able to, even going back to being able to judge character in a way, we can do the best that we can. So, so now, S&M, Mage, to a degree, the future, which we'll talk about, all of that is done in the pandemic. And now we are kind of coming out of it in a way. Like, I want to kind of like take this and I want to like take it out of here, kind of like as a symbol to the end of the season, because this isn't going to be here. you know what I'm saying, for much longer, we hope. And now you get to perform live again.
Yeah.
So how does that feel? What does that do for you?
Yeah.
How does, being on stage feel, and what do you walk away with?
I think it is kind of scary. I mean, I'm a super extrovert, and I still, I went out. It was kind of my first time going out by myself on Friday night. I went to the Pride event. I went to a June musician birthday party, met a friend, and then went to see Anna play. Shout out to Anna for the Ann Arbor Summer Festival. It was the Live Here Now.
Yeah.
And so, Tiny Tots, I'm sorry. And I remember the first stop I went to, I just sat in my car for 10 minutes because I was like, can I do this? Can I get out here and just get right back into being Dani Darling, and performative and all this kind of stuff? And I just had to take a deep breath and calm my anxiety. And I don't have social anxiety. I have a lot of anxieties, but usually not social. And that kind of perplexed me a little. I think it is gonna be tricky, but I kind of feel like it's when it comes to music, once I get up there and the music's playing, with Anna's show, after it was over, we got up there and did a couple of Sade songs together, and we sung together so often, and she's just a great friend of mine. So once we got up there, none of that from the beginning of the night was there whatsoever. So I haven't done any big shows yet, but I kind of feel like we're just going to get up there and it's going to feel like riding a bike. I think that'll probably be easier than the whole just social setting.
Okay.
Right, and at your kickback on May 1st.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
It was awesome to see you back up on stage and very knowledge of an audience, right? Maybe
I think that helped a little, not having an audience.
That's good. Do you have a favorite place right now to perform at here around in space?
I mean, I love Ziggy's. Ziggy's is near and dear to my heart.
Shout out to Ziggy's.
Shout out to Ziggy's. In Detroit, I think Willard's Show Bar is my favorite little spot out there. It's just so swanky and jazzy and that whole 40s vibe. That's my thing.
Willis is down by Wayne State.
It's
right?
It's on Cass.
On Cass, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's really nice. Their cocktail, it's just very old world. You just feel like a gentleman
and
or a lady.
I'm really interested to see what happens in the next few weeks when it comes to live performance, because there are new places. There's, and everybody is kind of reaching right now for that crowd to a point, people who want to hear it. So get your sets together, people. There's a lot of people looking for people to do stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Because I done closed my calendar's closed for here, so.
Really? You're closed? Yeah. You're closed for the rest of the season?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think, people talk about booked and busy, but I'd rather be evenly scheduled and well rested.
There you go. I get it.
Mental health.
I get it. So one of the things, you now have this catalog. You have things that you can reach back to. You also have some really strong covers that you can do if you choose to, for these sets. But thanks to the fellowship, you also have a brand new EP that comes out on June 25th, which will be a few days after this is released, Lord's will. The Future.
The Future.
Now, we've talked a little bit about, the context of the album, but The Future is an EP.
It is an EP.
It has what I would consider to be 4 full-length records. And 2 interludes in a way. Sublime is a record kind of in a way too.
Absolutely.
What do you want? Let's kind of talk, because of the amount of songs on it, we can kind of talk about them individually. Is that cool?
Sure.
So let's talk about Sublime.
Okay.
And I remember very distinctly, I will never forget this as long as I live, by the way. The first time I heard this record at Taylor's house, and it's dusk, and his cat is walking in and out of the room. Did he find his cat, by the way?
No, well, he's out there, but he's not coming inside right
now. No! I'm going to say a silent prayer for his cat.
Forrest.
But when I first heard it come on, obviously the first thing that you hear is Amplify static. Like Amplify static that, you know, so it's almost a throwback to what came before.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you have your guitar kind of strumming in, and then you hear this flute. And let's talk about the flute.
Yes.
The flute kind of is the guide for the entirety of the journey. Can you talk about your, like, have you been working with the flute player for a while? What's his name?
His name is James. He is an amazing, I can't say enough about James. We met him the first time we did the studio session. I remember saying to Taylor that I wanted it to sound retro. I wanted it to sound very like 70s, and to me that kind of, the flute kind of just reminds me of that. When I grew up, my sister had this amazing Hubert Laws record, and it was on vinyl, and he's a black flautist from the 70s, still alive. I love him so much. I found him on Twitter. I'm sure he's not doing that account, but it's exciting. But he had this song called Gymnopedie, and it's just the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard. And it just, that reminded me of the 70s. It reminded me of like that kind of black hippie vibe. And like, I just really wanted that to kind of be woven in through the album. And so I told him that, and he found James on Instagram, and we got together, and it was history. Like, it was, after that, the rest was history. We found out that we have the same sun, moon, and rising sign. And so, honestly, I just really feel like when he plays, it just feels like, I don't know, my soul responds. Like, you know, like when you hear drums and you know, feel the ancestors, like when that flute starts to play, I just feel like this angst and like release. And so it's been just such a beautiful experience working with him, and he's going to play with us hopefully forever, but he'll be at the show, and he's a part of the family now, really. So
good.
Yeah.
Good. I just it is kind of like a stirring moment. And I know that I hear music different than other people.
Yeah.
I know I do. I listen to it from a very, I like to say analytical versus saying critical, because I don't like to judge other people's music. I just like to try to understand the language that you're speaking.
Yeah.
And I absolutely, when I first heard that, said, okay, the flute is like a palate cleanser for me.
Yeah.
It kind of came in and just kind of said, this is about to be something that you need to kind of sit still and just kind of participate in. And so one of the, you know, the song comes in and you start to sing, and one of the things that kind of came in during the second movement of the song, and I don't want to give away too much, but you said, who's writing this? What did you mean by that?
Like when you end up in situations where, you know, you see a man get murdered on camera, you know, and people are, you know, scared and hiding in their homes. Like, that's what the pandemic felt like at first. Like, everyone was hiding. Everything was scary. And it's just like, how did we get here? Like, it kind of makes you want to ask, like, okay, like, how is all this happening? Like, is this something that's divine providence? If so, can I have a little input? You know?
Right.
So I think that's kind of what that line was about, was just kind of like not questioning God, but just kind of being like, okay, if there's something, there's, you know, everything works out for our good, or all things work together for the good. I'm struggling right now, you know, and there's certain things I want to be different. And even if that's not the case, I'm going to speak up and say that, you know.
Excellent. The Down. Was the Down, can you talk about, was the Down the product of the New Year's Eve piece? New Year's Eve night? No.
The Down I had started writing probably the summer before.
Okay.
And it had way different lyrics. But the chords were the same, and I knew what I wanted to do for the chorus. But that, we have been playing that song as a band for months in rehearsals, and it just wasn't coming together right. I don't know what, it just wasn't, still didn't feel finished, still didn't feel right. I didn't know what was going on with that song. And then when we got to the, you know, New Year's Eve session, you know, I had Yosef there. He's like a virtuoso.
Shout out to Yosef.
Yeah, shout out to Yosef. And he's just like a musical genius in my opinion. So like I was like, all right, well, let me try this and see if there's something that maybe I was missing or something that we can add, or maybe there's some other shoe that's going to drop. And it did. It really came together, and I don't know if it was just right time. I don't know. I don't think much changed musically from the way we were doing it before even. It just felt so different, and it just clicked. I think that's one of those inexplicable things about music. And then going back over it, I wrote all new verses because of like the pandemic and everything, and the message I wanted to kind of convey with this whole storyline coming from that first song. So that's how that happened.
It was, structurally speaking, it was the most single to me, like single structured song.
Absolutely.
The end of that song though is really good to me.
Yeah.
I really, really, really love it, and I love the video too.
Thank you.
I think there's an innocence in the video, and the way the video ends, it is kind of indicative of the time that we are at now. That's an entire, the world that you were in front of is a world that doesn't even consider all of this craziness that's going on around us.
Right.
And I think that once we can get to a space where we can be free again, then people will get back to figuring out what to do next.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think nature helps with that kind of thing. Like, it makes you not worry so much about the human complexities that we put on ourselves. Right. And when you're outside, you're just kind of like more at peace. I mean, more in tune, more grounded. So
I just think about how, you know, it's a little bit, it's summertime now, but this was a really, really dark winter that we went through.
Yeah.
It was really dark. You know, I mean, if you've paid attention to, not even, if you paid attention to what the news was saying with regards to COVID and stuff like that was one thing, but there was a thing involving the president, and then you had the January 6th thing. It was probably the darkest winter that many of us have experienced in a while.
Yeah.
So you captured part of that in the interlude with someone going to the store.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
I think, you know, when you're in a creative, like, free-for-all, I think for me, some of my insecurity as an instrumentalist comes out when it comes to jam sessions, you know, like, I like to always secretly have, like, a song written that I'm like, all right, I'm just going to sound like I know it. I'm just coming up with this, you know? Like,
right.
So, like, when we had such a long jam session, it's like you start to kind of feel, I don't know, pressure to be creative. You feel like, okay, you're on the spot. Like, it's not like karaoke. It's like you really have to dig in and come up with something right then. And, you know, I'm in the studio. I'm the only girl. So, like, kind of circling back to, like, they are amazing guys, but, you know, self-projection, you know, in a way. But, you know, I felt, you know, kind of pressure to be creative. And it's just crazy because in that one moment, I was just like, say you went to the store and came back. And so then we just kept saying that over and over again. And we were like, let's go with it. And so I think that's the thing. Like, when you're feel in a safe space, you could say anything. You could say, I am in demand over and over and turn that into a song and have it be like the most amazing piece ever, you know?
Right.
So I think that was us just kind of shaking out energy and feeling like when the world gets chaotic, we were kind of creating that chaos,
Right.
With our voices, you know, and not even with singing, with just like talking and just being like, you know, like we were just kind of going crazy for a moment. So
Right.
I think that's like a release. It was very much of a release in that moment because, you know, the world was going, it was intense right around New Year's.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so something that actually clicked, I think yesterday or today on the way here, is that I love that interlude. I like how light it is, and like it does call back to Pink Floyd, right?
Yeah.
But just the words, like, I went to the store and came back, and you have like the George Floyd clip at the beginning.
Yeah.
He went to the store and he didn't
Did
come
not. Right.
back, right? And so it's something that we take for granted,
Yeah.
you know, and I think that's where a lot of our fear and a lot of our like rethinking our everyday routines came in, like not just from the pandemic standpoint, but from like being Black in America and trying to go through your everyday life.
And Yosef was the only Black man in the room. So
but,
it was a celebration that he made.
But when you think about it, George Floyd didn't come back.
Yeah.
Trayvon Martin didn't come back.
No.
Right.
Mike Brown didn't come back. Eric Garner didn't come back.
No.
You know.
The list goes on.
Yeah. So that was impactful. That was impactful.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about that context under what we're creating.
Yeah.
In terms of being us capturing how we felt at this time. It's really fantastic. Then you have songs like Femme. Femme reminds me of being in like a really busy New Orleans restaurant. Like people were like hot dishes, like waiters like moving past people trying to give people their food. And it's just very unstructured other than you. There's James Brown.
Yeah.
There's, crawfish,
Yeah, and the brass ensemble, just like it calls back like Talking Heads or whenever The Cure had brass on, and I love it so much. It's just,
shouts out to Ben. I don't know everybody else's name. I just know Ben.
Ben Green, Connor was
Connor
on
Hoyt.
sax,
Yep.
and what was the other guy?
These are people I paid, so I know some of their names. Connor Hoyt,
And then
Ben Green. Oops, I don't know if
starts
you want me
with
to say
an
this.
E. Oh shoot! Now I'm drawing a blank. And he was the trombone player.
Ethan
No.
something.
No.
Don't make me look for it, because now I have to look for it.
Oh shoot!
are they gonna
Let's
be?
let's give him his flowers while we're here.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead. I'm gonna give him his flowers, absolutely,
And apologize.
and apologize.
Well, I do have a funny story. I do know that he is an Aquarius.
There you go.
And he has a landscaping business, and he was kind of the show off in the group. So when he does that, and I'm like,
Eli. Is
Eli,
it
yeah.
Eli?
And
Shout
I'm
out,
like,
shouts out to Eli. Sorry.
Eli, love you. He's kind of like, he was the one that kind of kept the energy up, kind of. And that's why it's really funny. I can't remember his name, but I think it's they were quite the group. They just came in, and like Ben was their great and fearless leader, and it was just we vibed with them a couple times, and it was just amazing just to have new energy and new sound. We worked with 6 Mile Strings.
Yeah.
And Deshaun Jones helped arrange the string parts for that, and they're just so beautiful. So just collaborative all across the board. And then, of course, you got James on the flute.
Absolutely.
Putting it all together.
And I'm curious about, you produced this project because you were the conductor, and you probably had more collaborators total than the other two combined.
Yeah.
What works well, and I think you've already kind of touched on it, but what works well in those situations when the sound is in your head, but you have to drive people to be their best selves as well,
Right.
and be able to empower their decision making as well? What worked for you in that part of the process?
I think having soundscapes, examples, and things for people to hear that, like, I always like to give people, like, I do demos. So, like, even before the New Year's Eve thing, like, we came in there 6-7 hours. We ended up doing all kind of crazy stuff. But I sent out a folder with, like, 8 or 9 different sound ideas that I had just kind of worked on myself and recorded and mapped out some demo versions of things. I think that really helps with people getting the idea. And then I kind of let them go. And then, in the moment, if it's, you just kind of vibe as a community, I think. You really just, I don't know how Miles Davis felt with Kind of Blue, but I think it's a collaborative thing more than people realize. Even when it is a producer, you give them the music, you give them what you want, and be very specific about that, and then all you do is just let them go. You know?
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. Did you have something to share about that?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
So for me,
I was going to ask.
please go for it.
Are any of your session musicians joining you at any of your shows this summer?
Yeah, so James and Ben are going to play the summer festival, and Taylor's playing drums with me most of the summer, really. Tim is going to be my bassist for most of the summer. We got Anna on keys and vocals. I got my sister Nikki singing harmony with Yoshimi, so I'll have 3 harmonizers.
Shout out to
year.
Yoshimi.
Yeah, shout out. And
we don't follow, like, I don't know her personally, but I am her Facebook friend, and I just remember her just seeming to have the most peaceful home I have ever seen in my life.
Yeah. She's just a very vibey person. Our families are close. We all grew up, like, we went to the same church.
Sure.
And we've grown up together. She's always been kind of like we've always been in each other's lives, kind of even in the background or gone away for years, but, you know, one of those long-term family connects.
Absolutely.
So she's really special to me. Us coming back together as friends in our adulthood at this phase has been so random and wonderful.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So for me, the future is the philosophical center of the album. There's some twists and turns in that song from a mix standpoint that kind of stand out. You know, I told you when we heard it at Taylor's that I felt like the bass line was the star of that song.
Yes.
You know, there's some tempo changes, kind of not necessarily just big changes, but just kind of going up the ladder a little bit. It's very jamish. Why do you feel like that song, like, what did you say, what did you feel from that song provided you with what you needed to kind of cement an overall vision for the project?
I think, that's a good question. I think on the night of New Year's Eve, you know, we're all waiting for the future. You're waiting for that ball to drop. And I think that's why it's my favorite holiday, is because everyone's so hopeful about it. And you get this moment of magic where, like, everyone is all hoping for a beautiful new start, or, like, you know, it almost feels like there's some big, that's going to come down and, like, change all our lives forever. And, of course, you do enough New Year's Eves that you realize that's not exactly how it is. But I think that's how New Year's Eve feels, where you're just, like, everyone's all dialed up and excited and anticipating the future. And it's my favorite holiday. And I think when everyone got together for that session, that's what we were all kind of hopeful about. Like, maybe 2021 is going to be better than 2020, especially after you come out of a rough year, you know. You're really kind of wanting that future to be bright. You're wanting everything to be okay. And I think that's why that particular song was important, because not only was it out of a New Year's Eve jam session, but I think, I don't know, the song's kind of like a New Year's Eve anthem. So
it is.
Yeah.
It sounds like when I listen to it, I hear a bullet train in Japan. Like, it's going. Like, it's, and you don't even realize you're sitting on the I just had this vision of you sitting on the train reading the paper, and you don't even realize that the train is, like, doing 130 miles an hour when, you know, we're all on a planet that's spinning at several thousand miles per hour, and we're a part of it. So I'm glad that you said that. I definitely connected with that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we move into Van with the wolf and the moon territory. You know, for the ending of the album.
Yeah.
That was the first song that I heard from the early sessions.
Yep.
And I put that on, and it was like a 21-minute, I want to say it was somewhere like that. It was like 14, 15, 20, something like that length. And it just was a zone.
Yeah.
And so
Rod shared with me like the initial recordings of the New Year's Eve, and I just like I had them on in the background like as I was working like for an entire day essentially, and there was quite a gap between when I listened to that versus like when I got to hear it all come together in the project, and I loved it, you know, like it's just an incredible journey. How is the energy going into that? Like, did you just like tell everyone like, hey, we're all gonna get together, like maybe New Year's Eve works, or?
Well, for the age, that was our first session, and actually that one was a couple weeks before New Year's, but it was another very like important day because it was winter solstice. And everyone astrologically was talking about how like this great conjunction, like the three wise men in the Bible story of Christ's birth were looking for the age of Pisces. And this great conjunction was happening again, and it was signaling the real age of Aquarius. And we were all like, okay, that's happening today. That's crazy. So we had our session, and I had already sent, I have a blueprint of me just playing that initial guitar part. And so I had sent that out to the guys, and it was our very first session for this project at Grove. And I was so nervous. So I just started playing that first strum, and then it just all came together. And me and Joel, he knew what my vision was for psychedelic, and it was our first time getting together with all the other players. And I have never experienced that kind of like a psychedelic jam, like free vibe where I didn't feel like I was lost or trying to keep up with jam sessions, and I just felt completely connected. And I think you can hear that, but it was just, I think that's probably my favorite experience of recording for this project was the age, and that's why that one means a lot to me. And by the end, like I'm going in on the guitar, and I'm like, I rarely hear myself on guitar and be like, "Go on, girl," but like that time I was kind of like, I went in,
give yourself
didn't
your
I?
props. Absolutely.
So and it just felt very like I grew up listening to Are You Experienced. I just really felt like I felt like it was exactly what I was in the interviews where you asked what I wanted to do. That's what I meant when I said I was. Yeah. That's what I heard in my head.
So now that you have done that, what, as you, I don't know if you want to go back to where you were. I mean, obviously you can't go back. You're gonna go forward with this new experience and knowledge that you have. How do you think that this experience will craft what you do moving forward?
I think learning how to do live recording has been a game changer. Before this, it was just me trying to do my own production, chopping and screwing things, or working with Ableton and doing my little limited ability as far as like, only having like guitar or tracks or guitar and tracks and maybe some piano. But now that I've kind of opened it up, I think that will change. Even if I do go back to lo-fi, even if I do go back into some other things I used to do, now I know how to do, I know how to set up a studio session and get instrumentalists in there and really kind of put the vibe out there to get what I'm hoping for. And I think the next few things will be collaborations with some of my favorite artists as well. So
what I would like to say to you is thank you.
Oh, thank you.
For allowing us to and supporting us in building the plane while we were flying it. And from an artist perspective, being able to hold us accountable for the things that you needed as well. And also for allowing us to kind of dig and become a part of this family that you have been establishing for years, that is Dani Darling. Because now, my hope is that the individuals that helped you in supporting your project, I don't know what that was. You know, my hope is that we've been able to illustrate a level of integrity and a level of quality and professionalism with them that we would potentially be able to go back to them and say, hey, such and such would love to have you play strings or horns or this, that, and the third. So because part of our vision was to make obviously a great opportunity for the three of you, but also develop a network of people who can work together and make some fantastic music and make it where whether somebody is from here or whether or not they come to this place, they have access to everything that they potentially could need to really do something profound musically. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
And what is the future for Dani Darling?
I don't know. Living the dream, I guess. More shows, more life, more music, more love, more healing. Because it's a lifelong process, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So I think that's what my future is hopefully full of, and hopefully more albums, music, more things.
More fame.
Yes.
More people. And this is the last one of this fellowship and one of the last steps for us for this cycle.
You guys did it.
Well, you guys did it.
We did it.
You did it. You guys did this. I can't show my bald spot. No, you guys were absolutely perfect the whole way. Absolutely. You got anything you want to share?
Just the dates. Just the dates for
Yeah.
Dani's shows.
I am doing the Summer Festival on June 24th. And what's cool about my show is that it is at 7 p.m., which is 5 hours before the EP drops. So we will have a little after party album EP release and then
digital release.
Digital release. Yep. Although I was promised some vinyl by Noah, so I'm gonna take him up
Put
on
it
that.
on tape.
Yeah. So
got it.
So the release is gonna be that night. Is gonna be a smorgasbord. It's gonna be a wild show. So that's gonna be exciting.
And where is that?
That's gonna be at the Ann Arbor Summer Festival. You have to RSVP to see the location.
A2SF.org.
Yes.
You can go there and get registered.
Or follow me on Instagram at Dani Darling Music.
Okay. Fantastic. So make sure that you like, share, and subscribe no matter where you are and what you're listening to us on. Dani, you have any more plugs that you want to go through? Where do people need to go to learn more about this record and what you do?
My Instagram is the most insightful, I think. It's at Dani Darling Music. That's where I usually vibe the most with people who follow me and my families. By family, I mean community and friends. And that's where you'll see me update and get inside look into my smorgasbord up here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can follow us at Amplify Washtenaw. You can follow the podcast at Zero Noise Podcast. You can follow me at Where's Wallace. You can follow Maia at Helveticate. Okay, explain.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I always wanted to
Before
know.
we leave, explain.
Okay. So, it's a play off of Helvetica, the
Right.
typeface,
The font, yeah.
and how it is overused by a lot of people. And it's just like, I don't know, I was like 17, 18, and it just sort of stuck. So that's my name across a whole bunch
socials.
of things. Yeah.
Okay.
Shout out to
Fantastic.
the screen names from when you were a teenager.
I
So
know.
Galaxy Girl for me.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
The old emails with like
Yep.
your pet names and stuff like that in there.
Make sure you also support Grove Studios at grovestudios.space. You can visit Leon Speakers at leonspeakers.com. Follow them on Instagram as well. Shouts out one more time to IamInDemand.com. I know it seems simple, but it's a very important thing.
And check out the Amplify Fellowship at amplify-fellowship.com.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
check 'em out.
Absolutely. And this is the end of season 1 of the Zero Noise Podcast. This is episode 16. We're going to be taking a couple of months off to take care of some other business, some other professional things, so we can come back bigger and stronger for the next season. I want to thank everybody who has supported me during this time and listened and commented and told me what they liked and what they felt I should do differently. And next year we're looking to come back bigger and stronger. So thanks for that. I sincerely appreciate all of the support. Continue to support great music, because when the music stops, everything else does. Peace. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.